Is this decision down to football or is it down to money?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it makes sense for Mo Salah. It also makes sense for Liverpool. If you go back to last April, he signed a new contract, 2-year contract, which would take him to the summer of 2027. Now, he's said to be the highest paid player in the history of Liverpool. There are reports that he earns between £350,000 and £400,000. Now, last season, he had an incredible season. Scored something like 28, 29 goals. Liverpool won the title. He hasn't hit those peaks this season, but then again, nor have his teammates. So I think from a purely financial point of view, Liverpool will be looking at this and thinking he's going to be 34 in June. Do we really want to carry on paying him that kind of money next season as well? And from his own point of view, perhaps he's thinking, I've completed football at Liverpool. I've won everything there is to win. Maybe now is the right time for a change. That's why I think it has something to do with football, something to do with money, but I think ultimately it's the right decision for both parties.
Kaveh, where next?
I think everyone is presuming that he's going to go to Saudi Arabia. Why? Well, we know Al Ittihad in 2023 made a verbal offer of £150 million for him. We know that the Saudi Arabian sports minister has said that it would be a dream to have the greatest Arab player of all time playing in the Saudi Pro League. We know that everybody in football accepts the fact that one day Mo Salah will go and play in Saudi Arabia. But we do not know for sure that it is going to be this summer. Nothing has been agreed. Nothing has been signed. I can tell you tonight for a fact there'll be multiple clubs in Saudi Arabia who will be absolutely desperate to sign Mo Salah, especially because he will be a free agent. But I can also tell you for a fact that there will be clubs in America who want to sign him. There will be clubs all across Europe who will want to sign him. There are clubs in the Premier League who want to sign him as well. When it comes to the Premier League, I think it will be complicated because will he want to play for another Premier League club? OK, he's played for Chelsea in the past, but after what he's achieved at Liverpool, will he want to play for another Premier League club? But I think if he does, there will be options for him, because I know for a fact that in the past, not too far in the past as well, other Premier League clubs have held talks about signing him, especially when it looked like it was almost nailed on that he wasn't going to get a new contract at Liverpool and he was going to leave Anfield last summer.
Look, I understand Liverpool getting his huge wages off the wage bill, but you just said there was an offer, a verbal offer of 150 million on the table. So it might not be that much, but there might be 100 plus, which Liverpool are giving up. Is that not crazy?
I don't think you would get £100 million for a player who's 34. Everybody I speak to in Saudi Arabia tells me we are not going to be paying transfer fees at that level. And also, Saudi Arabia is not going to become a retirement home for players who pass their sell-by date. So I don't think it's realistic to think that anybody was going to pay £100 million for him this summer, and Liverpool are being foolish by letting him leave for nothing. Now, you are completely right that in 2023, Al Ittihad made a verbal offer of £150 million. Now, did Liverpool do the right thing by turning that down? Well, if you ask Liverpool fans, they will say, yes, of course we made the right decision, because last season he scored 28 goals and we won the title, and we wouldn't have won that title if we'd sold him to Al Ittihad.
Do you think it's unconditional?
You are a scapegoat. I'm being thrown under the bus. So this decision for him to leave hasn't come out of the blue. We know there have been issues behind the scenes. The issues have had to do with how much he wants to play, how desperate he is to play as much as possible for Liverpool, and also to do with his contract. Because when you're a player as good as he is, when you're earning the kind of money that he's earning, contract negotiations are going to be difficult. They are going to be complicated, especially when clubs in Saudi Arabia are interested in signing you as well.
I've been asking you where he's going to go. Well, we've just heard from Rami Abbas Issa, who is his agent. He said this on social media: We do not know where Mohammed will play next season. This also means that no one else knows. Carve, do you believe him?
Absolutely, 100%. That backs up what we're saying. Nothing has been decided. We can stand here and go, he's definitely going to go to Saudi Arabia. But his agent, over the past couple of years, when it had looked likely that Mo Salah was going to leave on a free transfer and he wasn't going to get a new contract, he will have been talking to all the big clubs all around the world, not just clubs in Saudi Arabia. And I told you in the last hour that we were told a couple of months ago, for instance, that intermediaries had held talks with Chelsea about the possibility of him returning to Chelsea. Now, could I see him go to another Premier League club in the summer? I would be surprised, but I wouldn't totally rule it out. Let's wait and see how he feels. Would he feel okay with playing for another Premier League club? I'm not sure he would. Maybe in the next interview he gives, or in the next couple of months, he'll come out and say, after everything I've done for Liverpool, I would not be able to play for another Premier League club. So we could cross 19 Premier League clubs off the list of possible destinations. But he will have a lot of options, and he still feels that he is very, very fit. He still feels that he's got a lot to offer the game. He looks at Lionel Messi, the age he's playing at. He looks at Cristiano Ronaldo, the age he's playing at. Who knows? Maybe this summer he will think, for family reasons, now is not the right time for me to go to Saudi Arabia. It'll be a big, big decision for him. If he's motivated by money, I think he'll definitely go to Saudi Arabia. But I don't know him personally, but he hasn't come across as the kind of character who is purely motivated by money.
Arne Slot has been under huge pressure this season, given they were champions so easily last season and it's not gone so well this. Do you think, with that said, he's relieved at the news that Salah is going, or not so happy?
Very good question. If you look at Liverpool's statement tonight, I think in the third paragraph, they say that the player himself, Mo Salah, wanted this news to be out there at the earliest possible opportunity. So perhaps Liverpool would have preferred to keep this under wraps until the end of the season, because they didn't want the next couple of months to be all about Mo Salah. They want to focus on trying to win the FA Cup and trying to win the Champions League. But it does put Arne Slot in an interesting position, because he is now going to be under enormous pressure to play Mo Salah as much as possible. I think Liverpool have a lot of injury problems at the moment. I think once Mo Salah is fit, he's almost guaranteed to start. I've just been looking at Liverpool's fixtures. I think Liverpool have a minimum of 10 games left to play this season. That could be more depending on how well they do in the FA Cup, whether they beat Manchester City or not. Champions League, whether they overcome PSG over 2 at the moment. I think once Mo Salah is fit, he's almost guaranteed to start. I've just been looking at Liverpool's fixtures. I think Liverpool have a minimum of 10 games left to play this season. That could be more depending on how well they do in the FA Cup, whether they beat Manchester City or not. Champions League, whether they overcome PSG over 2 at the moment. I think once Mo Salah is fit, he's almost guaranteed to start. I've just been looking at Liverpool's fixtures. I think Liverpool have a minimum of 10 games left to play this season. That could be more depending on how well they do in the FA Cup, whether they beat Manchester City or not. Champions League, whether they overcome PSG over 2 legs as well. For a whole generation of Liverpool fans, Mo Salah is the greatest player they've ever seen in the flesh. For your generation and my generation, we remember Ian Rush and Sir Kenny Dalglish as well. So perhaps we wouldn't put him above them. But look, I think the important thing for Mo Salah is to get fit again, get back playing again. It's going to be emotional. Hopefully, from Liverpool's perspective, there's going to be at least 1, maybe 2 trophies as well to lift before the end of the season. And don't forget, it's not all about Liverpool as well. Mo Salah is incredibly proud to play fan. You know what you'll be thinking? You'll be thinking, I don't want that game to be the last game, Liverpool versus Brentford. I want the last game to be the Champions League final in Budapest.
It's the hope that kills. Kaveh Solokol, thank you very much.
Since joining Liverpool in 2017, Mo Salah has established himself as one of the best players in Liverpool history. But what legacy does he leave at this club?
It's shock. I'm in shock right now to even be talking about this right now. It's a bit bittersweet because it almost feels like there's unfinished business to the end of the season. But in terms of legacy, there's no doubt Mohammed Salah is a living legend, right? He'll go down as one of Liverpool's greatest ever players. And I'm really interested to see how he continues the rest of the way. But he's been an African footballing legend as well. And as someone who played in African football, as someone who was actually supposed to make his debut in African football against Mohammed Salah, this is surreal.
A huge moment happening, you can see, in terms of what he has done, not just for Liverpool, but in the Premier League, in Champions League. The list goes on and on. And for more on this announcement, we are pleased to welcome in CBS Sports English football correspondent James Benge. Hey, James, welcome in. It is so good to chat with you about this and big news. As Michael said, we're a little bit shocked here, but tell me a little bit more about this, because Mo Salah had another year on his contract. He just re-signed one more year at Liverpool. Why is this decision coming now?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, the question might really be, why did this not happen last year when Mohammed Salah was on top of the world? Probably the best individual season that a Premier League player has had. And he had the chance to move on, but I think he felt that he had unfinished business in Europe at the highest level, and he wanted to continue this story with Liverpool. For both parties, it hasn't gone quite in the direction they were hoping. Salah's own form has dropped off somewhat. He's not been maybe as bad as some have said, but his form has dropped off. It's been harder to justify paying him £400,000 a week, as Liverpool are understood to pay him. And of course, tensions really frayed as Liverpool's own form struggled. In December, he said that he felt like he'd been thrown under the bus by the club when he was placed on the substitutes bench very frequently. And although, after the Africa Cup of Nations, he sort of came back into the side and his form's not been that bad, it's quite apparent that, you couldn't really justify another season of this either for Salah or for Liverpool. So while sort of like Mike, my initial reaction was shock at the in the moment announcement, I don't think it's really that much of a surprise that Salah isn't seeing out year 2 of this contract.
So it's not a surprise that it's actually happening, but what about the manner, right? He has agreed to leave Liverpool. Liverpool has allowed him to leave at the end of the season. To me, free agent comes to mind, but how is this deal being finalized?
Yeah, Salah is leaving as a free agent. In many ways, this sort of reflects what we reported on CBSSports.com back in December when, this was at its crescendo. And it was very clear then that the obvious landing spot for Salah, and I know we'll come on to talk about potential destinations, but the obvious landing spot of Saudi Arabia, the clubs there were not really minded to pay Liverpool much of a fee, if any at all, to sign Salah. Salah would get a out of this world extraordinary personal package, but Saudi Arabia were looking at this and saying, you've got a player that isn't performing as he used to, that you probably want to move on from. We're not going to pay you to take him off your hands. And frankly, if the Saudi Pro League clubs are not minded to pay a transfer fee for your 33-year-old on £400,000 a week, it's going to be a real struggle to find anyone elsewhere. So to an extent, just kind of cutting the cord now allows Salah to have his farewell that he has absolutely earned. It allows Liverpool to start their planning, and it probably means you don't kind of waste time trying to drum up a transfer fee that in all likelihood I think wouldn't have come.
James, you've covered Mohammed Salah, and you've covered the Premier League in those 8 seasons, those 8 years he's been a part of it. When you take a step back and you look at all he's done and all he's meant to Liverpool, what's his ultimate legacy with the club going to be when it's all said and done?
With the club, one of the greatest players ever, and we have to say, being one of the greatest Liverpool players ever means you are one of the greatest players in the history of English football, in the history of European football. And, we've seen the prizes there. The most PFA Player of the Year awards, that is a very hard one title. The most Golden Boots, level with Thierry Henry. These individual accolades kind of speak volumes. To me, I would also say, and I said this at the top, I sincerely believe that last season was the greatest individual season in the Premier League era we've ever seen from a single player. You're talking 29 goals, 18 assists in 38 games. That's more goal involvements last season than Manchester United. Sorry, Mike, for bringing that up, but I had to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, there's so, we could sit here for hours just talking about his records, but the joy, the exuberance, and the delight that he brought to Anfield, and the quality of so many of those goals. He's one of the greatest players the Premier League has ever seen. I used to get excited for Liverpool coming to London, especially in those first few years of Salah, because it felt like he'd kind of come out of nowhere. He hadn't. He's one of the great recruitment triumphs of the last decade. Liverpool were the team that spotted all those expected goals and realised they translate to the Premier League quite spectacularly. But he was just a player you got really excited to see. I think that the game I saw last season for him at West Ham is one of my favourite memories of recent years in football. He was that good.
So well said, James. For me personally, I think Mohammed Salah is Liverpool's greatest ever player. I know it's debatable. I know Stevie G's up there, but for me, what I've seen from him, and you and I, we've sidebar about his role, the significance of the resurgence, getting the hands on that trophy. I'd even put him top 3 in Premier League history all time. But for me, I want to talk about the Premier League as a whole, because just in the last, let's just say 2 seasons alone, right? We've seen the Premier League lose some of its keyest contributors, James, in the last decade. I'm talking about Kevin De Bruyne, no longer there. We're now about to start seeing Mohammed Salah, not part of the Premier League, at the end of this season. Harry Kane playing football in Germany. He still might come back to